Glad to have you along, and this is kind of a twofer. I was talking to one of your colleagues yesterday as we were trying to make sense. Was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. This whole week is just blending together. Let me just ask you this, and I'll get into the reconciliation stuff. Did you also not get a lot of sleep the other night, going over all the reconciliation stuff? Because that's what I heard.
Yes, it's a busy time, Casey. You know that, but right now the kind of the two most scrutinized committees in the House are going through their markups. And it's one of those situations where when everything is a catastrophe, nothing is a catastrophe. And you had very benign committees, very benign portions of this reconciliation package in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And it was nothing but theatrics from the other side of the aisle, throwing up silly amendments, trying to bait folks into debates that lacked substance, that lacked merit, that had nothing but just TV value. And that's basically what we're still seeing. There's no willingness to engage. There's no willingness to work through these real issues that face the country. No one's talking about the fact that we pay $2 trillion every year that we don't have, that we borrow. We keep on throwing up these posters and having outbursts that really are counterproductive, and it's a real shame. But yes, all of us up here are up late. We're working hard, and we're hoping to deliver this bill in the next few weeks.
Yeah, Congressman Murphy is who we chatted with. He seemed equally as enthusiastic that there was going to be shenanigans. So it sounds like shenanigans were in fact afoot. Let me ask you about some bigger shenanigans. You've probably seen Hakeem Jeffries now talking about the issue that took place at that ICE facility and that it's a red line and Republicans better not do anything. I'm curious, as your job as a former prosecutor, to me, and I am not judge, jury, and executioner, to me, I feel like if I had been at something and I had gotten that physical with a federal agent, that I would be charged at the very least with some sort of obstruction, but probably assault in some way, shape, or form of a federal officer. And I'm telling you, the fact that for whatever reason you all can't effectively be charged with stuff like that does not sit well with people, especially after what happened with Trump, man. So are you guys going to do something about this?
Well, that's a great question. Congress cannot do anything about this.
Correct.
I would encourage I would encourage anyone in the law enforcement community to review that case, in every case where law enforcement witnesses something that seemed to be very obvious and clear. And I'll state, Casey, I have not seen the entire video. I only saw portions where Representative MacGyver was very physical and
there's three angles. There's three angles.
Yeah,
certainly
administered contact to an ICE agent and law enforcement. And whenever that occurs, she should not be viewed as anything other than an individual who's hoping to achieve a certain task. And this task, I served with this particular representative. It was entirely foreseeable that this type of activity would ensue. The Democratic Party, in some factions, I'll say, not uniformly, but in some factions, have such disdain for law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level. They have such disdain for any person who would state the following: the United States cannot sustain illegal immigration like we saw under Joe Biden. The Democratic Party absolutely hates anything that the president is doing. And when you combine those three energies into one movement, you see what we saw. And again, I serve on the Homeland Security Committee with Ms. MacGyver. She and her colleagues cannot even admit the most basic realities of the Joe Biden administration. They won't admit that his immigration policies inflicted grave damage. They cannot admit that ICE is doing tremendous work right now trying to get ahead of this problem that we just saw. And, the local law enforcement, the local chapters of ICE, the FBI, DEA, et cetera, they will review this case. And again, justice is blind. If you were to get charged, Casey?
It's not. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be argumentative with you, but nobody believes that when it pertains to elected. It should be. You're absolutely right, but nobody believes that it is as it pertains to D.C.
Yes, if I had acted in that way outside the White House when Joe Biden was president, I would be charged, I believe.
And you should.
And yes, and that type of behavior has no place in civil society. And when you look at it on a broader perspective, what was she protesting? What was she fighting for? She was fighting against the removal of dangerous, illegal immigrant criminals who are in custody. She was fighting against their removal. She was fighting for them to stay. And the cost of that philosophy, the cost of that politic that she is fighting for, you can't overstate it. And they are not learning the lessons of the past. Most Americans can see right through this. And for whatever reason, the Democratic Party is doubling down that if you came here, regardless of why or how, you deserve to stay. And that's something that we all must clarify.
No, I'm sorry, not if you're 59 people from South Africa.
Well, apparently, yeah. If you're a refugee from South Africa and you look a certain way and you have a certain culture, then you should be removed. But under Joe Biden, anyone who came should stay. That's right.
Yeah. Hey, all right. So I know you guys can't do the legal thing. That's for them. But what you guys can do is you can remove this woman. There's no reason she should be on Homeland Security if she's assaulting ICE officers. Right? That's insane.
It is. It's insane. And we've got a committee hearing today, Casey, where Secretary Knott is going to appear before our committee. So I'm curious to see how the Democrats will respond. I wouldn't be surprised if that video is played before the committee launches into questions with Secretary Noem. But I urge the listeners here, again, we saw up between 10 and 20 million illegals come to the country. Not one elected member in Congress that I have heard has said that was a mistake. Not one. And that's what really undermines my question. Where are the Democrats who will say we cannot afford what we just went through? And they don't protest it. They do not want to fix it. If they get back into power, mark my words, it will be open borders bonanzas all over again. They are working for it. They want to protect it. They want to institutionalize it. And they want the voices of Americans to be drowned out. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to hear with Ms. McIver. She's going to blame Trump. She's going to blame conservatives. She's going to blame Americans. She's going to blame something with race probably. And it's very unfortunate that this is where we are, but that's what I expect. And I think it's pretty foreseeable that's the direction we're going to go.
Also, she claimed that the video was it's like AI or something. So she's going to blame AI too. So throw that in the stack. All right. So a couple other things for you. Just because we're chewing on this. I saw an interview yesterday. It was more of a roundtable, and it had Steve Bannon was one of them, and he's still somewhat arm's length from people like Stephen Miller and people within the administration. So I'm curious when he says things. He and others are firmly convinced that there may be at some point with all of these judges. What do we have? 250 different lawsuits pending right now against things that Trump's wanting to do, especially Article 2 powers, which I thought were clear. And they're convinced that at some point that Trump may go down the road of suspending habeas corpus, if I'm pronouncing that right. So, a la Lincoln. Is that really something you guys think is a possibility or could happen? And what would that mean?
It's a great question. And, I have gotten no information, I'll say that from the outset, from the administration about any next steps in regards to this, but basically, as you know, habeas corpus precludes the detention, indefinite detention of folks without any sort of quote legal definition. It's sort of a wartime power, and it is. And I don't believe that we're there. I think that Stephen Miller is right to be gravely frustrated. However, we are getting wins in the courts. There are in our budget reconciliation package, there are efficiencies built in to get folks deported quicker. But, one of the things, Casey, that I really hope people are seeing is elections do have consequences. And when you elect someone in the Democratic Party today, you are electing someone who will appoint judges that do not enforce the law, that do not protect Americans, that do not enforce our borders, and will work tirelessly to enact the globalist open border agenda. And Stephen Miller is correct. He has come to the Judiciary Committee numerous times to engage with us, to strategize with us. Habeas corpus has never been mentioned in terms of something that he wants to go after. The administration is working within the law. They are fighting every lawsuit vigorously. One of the issues that we do have is, unfortunately, within the Department of Justice, 12 of the last 16 years have been under Obama and Joe Biden. And so we have a lot of people in there who are working against the mission of President Trump to remove these illegal criminals. But in terms of suspending habeas corpus, I would be very surprised if that's a step that's taken. Stephen Miller is obviously very scholarly. He loves, toying with the media. And at this point, I think that's what that was. It was a vocal vent of frustration.
Well, it wasn't Miller. It was Bannon intimating what Miller means. So there is a little bit of separation. But they do. It's my understanding that they like each other. But probably
they do. And I'll say this: that the whole debate on this issue. The left and the Democrats are trying to make it a due process issue, and that's sort of where a lot of the frustration. They want every criminal to have you, Casey O'Day, pay for their attorney, pay for their housing, pay for their trial, and they're not do that. The only due process that an illegal can expect is, are you here legally or not? And that does not require a court. Law enforcement has that capacity.
It is. Yeah.
And I say this with a little bit tongue in cheek. If the 10 million minimum, if the 10 million people get 30 minutes in court, that's 600 years, almost 600 years of court time. That is not how the law operates. That's not how the Constitution functions. If you're here illegally, get out. And if you don't get out, the United States will help you get out.
And you're not saying that because you just think that. You're saying that because there is case law that specifically addresses how people in this situation are treated. The Supreme Court has already said they don't all get the traditional, pathway that a citizen would. This is settled law, correct?
That's right. We're getting into weeds here, but a removal from the country is a civil proceeding. Due process attaches when you are charged criminally. If I go and charge you criminally, or let's say Ms. McIver gets charged, she is automatically due various protections of the Constitution, process, and court of law, the right to an attorney to fight the charges, etc. Returning you to your home, that is not a criminal endeavor. If someone steps over the border illegally outside the legal pathway, he or she cannot say, "I'm here illegally, give me a lawyer." No. The only thing that they are due is the right to go home in a humane way. So it's what you said is correct. It's a total non sequitur, and the frustrations are growing, but the resolve is not, and that's where we are up here right now.
The new Jake Tapper book is insane. It's more infuriating that he and the media who ignored this are going to make money. There's discussion that within the White House they were talking about putting Joe Biden in a wheelchair. He didn't recognize George Clooney. I know that they're looking into this. How in the world are those last-minute pardons legal? Is it from a legal perspective? If you don't know where you are and who you are and you're robo-penning stuff, is there a real pathway to maybe question the validity of those?
Well, let me start first with Jake Tapper and all of the friends of the establishment media up here. It's amazing how people across the spectrum, politically and in the media, all of a sudden act surprised that Joe Biden was deficient in his faculties at the end of his first term. I would submit that if he had undergone appropriate scrutiny, he would have never been the nominee back when he was running in 2019 and 2020. Yes, he was sharper then than he was when he finished, but he was in no way robust. And this idea that the entire class of people around him are surprised, it reeks of dishonesty and desperation because they've been caught. And Jake Tapper knows that. Jake Tapper knows that Joe Biden was failing long before it became accepted into media circles. And Jake Tapper played a very wide role in promulgating that lie to the American people. At no point in Joe Biden's presidency was he at full strength, at full vigor, and fully present with us. He campaigned from his basement. He had the entire media complex behind him the first time he ran. That's the only reason he was able to stand up on his own 2 feet. It's the only reason why he won that election. So for Jake Tapper to be outraged, spare me the crocodile tears. We are owed an apology more than anything else. In regards to the pardons, it's a case of first impression, and I think that has some very real merit to go through the adversarial process of studying that. If you have someone who does not know where they are and they use a robo-pen, not just the pardons, Casey, but what bugged me were these, thousands of commutations and pardons that were for these horrible criminals. It wasn't just pardons. He commuted sentences. He shortened sentences. And these, some of these people came out of the office that I worked in, people that I were involved in prosecuting. These are not nonviolent people that he prosecuted. These are people who who inflicted extreme violence on the people of North Carolina and the southeastern United States. They sold millions of dollars of drugs. They enacted extreme violence in building their drug empires. And for Joe Biden, without any warning to the local communities from which they came, to the local law enforcement that built the cases, and the federal law enforcement who finished the cases, it really reeked. I remember that. I was stunned. I had agents calling me saying,
30 seconds. 30 seconds. I just want to let you know, Congressman. So.
Yes, this person got released. Can you believe that? And it reeks of something that is untoward. And if Joe Biden was not involved in that process, it needs to be scrutinized.
Okay. Yeah. The whole thing is it's really dark, but I think it's more than a stunt at this point. All right, Congressman Brad Knott, appreciate it this morning. We'll let you get back to it. We'll talk soon. Okay.
All right. Take care, Casey.